This particular gospel reading is a really good one, but it's a really long one. So I read the shorter version of it, which is still valid for today. I remember when I was a kid, this reading brings me back to some times of my childhood. I was a city kid when my grandma lived up in the mountains, very close to a huge volcano that was up there in Guatemala. And I remember going up there. There were no cars that could get up there, so from the house from our city to her place, we just took a bus. And then I remember walking towards her place. From the bus station, we would go walking uphill all the way. I mean, it was a mountain. There were no downhills anywhere that I can remember. Probably because I was a kid and lazy and didn't want to walk much, but it was a cobblestone road. And it kept going and going and going and going, and I'm thinking, wow, this is a long road every time. Eventually, it turned into a dirt road, and we kept going up. And I remember going to help my grandma for the harvest, and I used to love just pulling down the corn. My hands were not very good at it. I was a kid with, pretty hands. And then once she told me, well, why don't you come over? I remember those beans that you like so much? I mean, the beans were bigger than your thumb. If you have a big thumb, they were bigger than that. They were huge beans, and I loved them. And she told me, why don't you come over and help me go sow the land and get it ready. Get it ready for sowing. So the mule comes out, and me, and then we go out, and I'm tilling that land. She had, I don't know how many hundreds of acres. Of course, I didn't do all of it, but it felt like I did. And as I was going with the mule in front of me, I remember hitting a lot of rocks. But the mule just kept going. Now, the thing behind it just kept moving all over the place with my skinny little body. And then sometimes the rocks would come up enough that I could pick them up and put them aside. Sometimes the old husks were there, the old stalks were there, and somehow they grew crooked because there were rocks, but they actually grew. This is the part on this that it's hard for me to understand. This was soil that was really rich, volcanic, right? But there were rocks, also volcanic. And I remember the big piece of land and getting it ready, and then I couldn't do it all, so the real man would come over and finish it for me. Then another time, she invited me again, same thing. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to be behind that stinky mule. And she said, no, you're going to do a different field now. And I did. And it was a field where she actually grew the beans. And then I asked her, where's the mule? And she says, no, you're going to push yourself. And I'm like, no, I'm a pretty boy from the city. And then she gives me this spade thing that I had to push, but it was behind me. Weird little thing. I pushed it. I moved faster than the mule. That piece of land had no rocks. It didn't even need to be prepped or anything. You could throw anything anywhere and it would just grow. It was like magical. Once in a while, I would find a rock there, but it was loose. I could just throw it to the side. And I remember looking down the hill, and they had these big mounds of rocks. It never hit me before where they got them from. Years and years, 150 years of the family tilling the land. A lot of times we don't know what to do with these rocks in our life. And a lot of times we don't understand that when we sow a seed somewhere, there's rocky ground in there. That rocky ground may be somebody's heart who seems to be hard like stone, but it may not be. I remember seeing clearly during harvest time, going up there and pulling down those big corns. I was barely tall enough to reach them and then breaking down the stalk. And I could see that corn grew crooked the whole time because somehow that seed got in between the rock and the soil. But it grew. And I didn't understand how things grew so well in there. I tried that at the city, nothing would grow there. A lot of times we don't know what something's going to take us, what a seed is going to do, or whether we ourselves are fertile soil. even when we think that our hearts are hard or not ready. And that's the beauty of it all. When I was growing up, I would go back to my city and to my little chapel. It was not quite a parish. It was just a chapel. And I remember the sisters trying to fix my heart. And I remember looking back at them and seeing them planting seeds where nothing would grow. I'm talking about me. And I remember them continuing that work. A lot of times we don't know what you can do with a rock. But I would love to eat those beans, and my grandma would cook them for me on her kitchen. What was that made of? Same stones. What was her stove made of? Same thing, same stones. A lot of times we don't look at the fact that God permits these things in our lives. He doesn't cause them, but He permits them. And it is up to us to figure out what we do to become that fertile soil. Sometimes we don't realize that the only thing that we need to do is just pull on that dead stalk. That dead stalk that over its short lifetime loosened the soil and loosened the rock in silence. That's the part that we need to remember when we read this. To me, I never looked at those beans again, ever, after going through those two. And my grandma did it in the right order. She put me on the toughest ground first, with the shortest, weakest mule, and then she used me as a mule just to teach me what to do with the rocks. Dear God, help us understand what you want us to do with those rocks that you permit in our life. And we ask you to please help us use those rocks for your glory. Saint Peter, pray for us.